from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm Kimberly Costabile, and this week we are honoring our veterans. I'm here with Dr. Fred Foote, a retired Navy neurologist and author, and June Forte, a poet laureate who started the Virginia Poet Laureate program, the Company of Laureates. We'll be talking a little bit more about creative ways that writing can be used to cure PTSD. But first, let's talk a little bit, since I'm in the company of veterans today, I'd like to hear a little bit about your veteran experience and how are things today as a veteran compared to when you were in the service?
Well, Kim, I'm a 29-year military veteran. I retired in 2009, so I kind of span Vietnam all the way through Gulf War I to the present. And the biggest change has been how much smaller the military is right now. Only 1% of households have a family member in the military. And so as we try to do programs to help veterans who are facing challenges, it's important to have bridge and ways of helping civilian folks understand what veterans are going through.
Thank you. Thank you. And June, you were saying that you had noticed that there were differences between back when you were serving in the Army and what's going on today.
Yes, certainly. I had the fortune of going into the Army in 1977 when there was a great deal of Vietnam seasoned combat veterans in my unit, the 4th Infantry Division, that I was assigned to. And I was a photojournalist, so I got an opportunity to put my nose into everybody's business and be welcome to do that. One of the things I really noticed about the Vietnam era veterans is that they were very protective of each other, and there was a lot of leeway to young troops. Okay, today, now I've worked for 20-some years with the military now as a civilian, and finishing my career at the Pentagon after 17 years, and I find that because the services are downsizing, that they're not as open to trying to work with a young person if they make a mistake. All right. Used to be, you made a mistake and the first sergeant would get a hold of you and take a stripe away or something. But now they're more readily putting them out of the service rather than trying to work with them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
June, do you think there's generational differences between the current Iraq War generation and the Vietnam ones?
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. I have gone around the country talking about 9/11 and what happened at the Pentagon, and I always make a point of telling the young service people that I meet that the Vietnam veterans have their backs, that what happened to them is not going to be allowed to happen to these young troops, and it hasn't. The country has been very open and loving to our troops right now.
I know that we're taught in school even you can dislike war but support the veteran, and that's what we're hoping to do today by this show.
That's our philosophy.
Yes, yes. And when we read some of these writings, creative writing from fiction to poetry, we really observe the firsthand experience, and I think that is both cathartic for the writers, but it also connects the reader to the experience a little bit more. But I still feel that there's a disconnect. On the phone, we also have on the phone today, we have Richard Epstein, and he is the founder of the Memorial Day Writers Project. And also, do you find that there's still a disconnect, a need to connect the civilian and the veteran?
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Okay.
We've been down in the mall since 1993, a group called the Memorial Day Writers Project. So we put up a tent, and rain or shine, we have an open mic venue for all veterans and friends of veterans. We do poetry, prose, and song. We have a lot of book authors that come down, and they'll also have their books for sale.
Yeah,
and poets that may have chapbooks, and they could sell them also. And singer-songwriters that tell their story using the arts and song. And if anybody's in the area and they would like to hear some veterans talk about what it was like and what it is like, come on down. It's open to anybody.
And I've attended it. It's an awesome show, Dick, so I know you're going to have a big success.
You'll be there in spirit. It's okay.
That's awesome. And so, Dick, what have you found? What was the big difference between when you first came home versus what you experience now as a veteran?
It's like day and night. It was quite different then. Obviously, there was a lot of anti-war protesters, and it was very, well, number one, we were told not to wear our uniforms when we come back. Most of us came back on civilian airlines. And it was not uncommon to have somebody throw something at you, spit at you, come up and yell that you're a baby killer. I mean, people knew what they knew, and they didn't want to know anything different. So today, obviously, it's a lot different. We have learned that you could support your troops because we're doing what our country asked of us, and it sure doesn't make sense to denigrate the veteran, I don't think.
And where can someone find the Memorial Day Writers Project book that you wrote?
Well, that's a tough one. I'll have a couple copies down in the mall.
Yeah.
If they do a Google search on Epstein, a common bond.
A common bond.
Right. They could get a e-copy for like $2, and that's obviously a good way to do it. If I Xerox it and have it for sale, it's like $12. So 2 is better than 12.
Okay, good, very good, very good. So yeah, we look forward to hearing more of it. I have a clip from June organized this Company of Laureates event, and at this event, she decided to have a panel of veterans. That's just one aspect. This was all about poetry statewide, but there was one panel regarding veterans, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I have a clip from it that I would like you all to hear. It's a poem by, I believe, Bill Glose, if I have his name correct, and he's going to talk about what writing does for him, and the process. So we'll listen to him for a little bit. Okay, ready? Is it rolling?
I didn't talk about it or share any
we can hear
experiences with anyone for about 10 years. Then I started writing about it. I wasn't sure what it was going to do to me to dredge up these memories that I'd been trying to hide, and I was surprised to find out how cathartic it was. But I had to take baby steps. Some of the events were just too raw. So what I did was I focused on the periphery, and I slowly worked my way in to those difficult events. And the first poem I'm going to read today does exactly that. It talks about some of the mundane things that happen even on the battlefield. And it's called Desert Moon. Heat of the day. Men hunch over weapon components spread on ponchos, fussing like old women at a flea market. Some nap beneath halos of buzzing flies. I lean against my rucksack on the side of a dune, tasting the sweet stillness. Undulating landscape before me as strange as that of the desert moon. Pockmarked with craters from blows it never anticipates. Specialist Taylor shows me laminated photos of his baby girl. She lives in the webbing of his Kevlar helmet. One day, he hopes to touch her face for real. T. Fertiller is riding home, pen perched in the corner of his mouth, like a swimmer on blocks, waiting for a gun to fire. Rambali shakes a Tupperware with a scorpion inside. Pincers open, wait for lids burp, aching to snap something soft. Garner offers an MRE ham slice to a stray dog, thin as a t-shirt on a hanger. It sniffs, skittish, as if it knows that next week shrapnel will tattoo its name across Garner's stomach. His heels will dig tiny graves in sand while Gomez starts an IV. For now, though, the dog takes the meat. Garner smiles, and the desert moon inches across a cerulean sky.
So June, what do you think about that poem?
Well, I have to tell you that helping me in the company of Laureates were two Marines that I'm teaching in class. I teach at Northern Virginia Community College communication class, and they volunteered to come and help me. And they sat in, and I sat next to them. And as they were walking out, they said, "Boy, they really get it. They really know." And it was, I think, particularly Bill is very much there on the battlefield.
Very good. And what was the reason you decided to include Fred in the panel?
Well, I actually met Fred first. Fred at the Festival of the Books in Charlottesville in the spring. I went to his panel. He was on a panel discussion. I was so impressed with his poetry and the power of the words of the poetry that I knew that I wanted to include a veterans panel. And then I met Bill Gloss, who came up to Prince William with another one of the poet laureates and put on an art and war event, a small event for the poets. And so I had him. And then I found Jim Matthews.
That's exciting.
And brought him into the crowd too. And of course,
Great.
Claudia, who you're going to talk to later. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk to Claudia later. And so Fred is going to leave us just briefly, and then we'll have Claudia here. And then Fred is going to come back and tell us about some exciting things, including the Green Road Project. But so for now, we have to leave for a break shortly. But in the meantime, we'll be talking to Claudia and Fred. And so we'll say goodbye to Richard. Richard, is there anything else you want to say as we sign off?
No, it's been enjoyable.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you Wednesday. Thanks for your service.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about $3,000. Nothing very nice. Homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals and the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
And Claudia and June actually organized the Poet Laureates event, and she might describe that a little bit better as to what is a Poet Laureate and why did you decide to organize that?
Okay.
Well, the poet laureate is, depending on the poet laureate of what, is the best poet laureate awarded in the state or in the county. Ours happens to be in Prince William County, where we have 2 poet laureates. And we have a state poet laureate, Ron Smith, and they're poet laureates for 2 years at a time. And some poet laureates are, there for life. So we decided to put a cap on ours because we thought 2 years was just fine to go. It usually takes 3 things to make me take an action. Okay, so we did the poet laureate. We put this through the county poet laureate program. And then I also got involved with the Poetry Society of Virginia. They called and asked me if I would sit on their advisory board. Even though I'm not a poet, I don't know what they're thinking, but there I was on their advisory board. And number 3, I thought, why can't we have a poet laureate in the county? And I'm really convinced that we have to build the community that we want to live in. We can't sit and wait for somebody else to take care of it. I mean, we always, and I'm guilty of it too, why don't they do this? All they have to do is this. So I decided to take action. The worst that could happen is they'd throw me out somewhere, and kick me out the door. So I put a proposal together and took that to the Prince William Art Council. And they became very supportive of that, at least vocally supportive, and not monetarily supportive, but somebody came through and gave us funding for the first 2 years of the Poet Laureate program. So we were very fortunate to get that funding. So we've started with that. And then I decided, well, goodness sakes, we have all these poet laureates and former poet laureates around in the area. Why not bring them together and see if we can have sort of a master laureate meeting? And fortunately, the venue, the Hilton Performing Arts Center, was very generous with allowing us to use their facility for that. And it was very successful. We had close to 200 people that came and attended that for a first-time event. It was very successful, I thought.
It was beautiful. And so you used your military experience to organize the poets. And isn't that a little bit like herding cats? Or?
Yes, it is. It is very much like herding cats. But I tried to provide them as much information as I could. I kept them informed every step of the way so that they knew what was coming and what came together. And it was pretty close. What I told them was going to happen pretty much happened.
Super. And then you asked Claudia to head up your veterans, to head up the panel on veterans issues. Or veterans.
Well, Claudia came to me and wanted to be a part of it. And then when I realized that she had been the editor of Vietnam Magazine and had a background in that and poetry, etc., I just sort of gave her that panel to pull together for me. I knew I had the people arranged that I wanted, but then Claudia took over and pulled it together into a panel.
Great.
Yes, it was really very interesting to meet them and hear them, what they had to say, and I appreciate that.
You just did a great job.
Thank you.
Yes, and what were your experiences when as editor, you would come across the writing of several people, and so you in the panel you mentioned that it affected you deeply.
Right, it did. Well, I was senior editor, which sort of translates into assistant editor, and my work was to prepare articles for publication. Many of the best first-person accounts were by people who had excellent stories, but they were not writers. So the idea was to make them, flow, make them readable, and and help the narrative. Yeah, and in the process, I met some really interesting people and people I really respect and admire. Yeah.
We have a clip from the conference that I'd love for us to show of Claudia, and it's a little bit about how she reveals how it impacted her. So if they have the clip, there she is.
Had important stories to tell. We're not trained as writers, so I was there to help bridge that gap. In the process, I learned a lot that affected my own writing, including my poetry. I think among other things, it helped me put my writing into better perspective and be more concise. It also taught me to listen more carefully to the meaning and emotion behind what people say. because there was often a good deal that these people in particular could not or would not say in words.
So that was a wonderful experience for you. We have another clip of Bill Gloss again speaking another poem called Get Some. And do you remember that poem?
Oh, that was devastating poem.
Get
Yes,
Some.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I found that intriguing because it talked about the new generation and when they're playing video games, and but not really connecting the warlike video games to the reality. So if we have Bill's clip,
it is a sad fact that while veterans often look back on conflict with remorse and gratitude for having survived, youths often look forward to war as some thrill they wish to chase. Get some. They chant it, these zombies clutching joysticks, mesmerized by screens of pulsing light, splashes of color. Get some, get some. Cave dwellers wearing headsets. Avatars run, point, shoot at friends whose faces they've never seen. Get some, get some. Sunshine is no lure, no excitement in swatches of green grass, no wonder in the sky. They want to know what it's like to watch a head explode. Can't wait till they're 18, worried they'll miss their chance to get some. I want to roll a boulder into their river and change its course. I want to press weight of history upon them, but their minds are already flat. They howl at videos of skateboarders face planting, grinding tracts of skin on pavement. Whoa, dude, he got him some. These boys wear innocence like a dirty diaper. If only I could shield their eyes before jigsaw of someone they once knew burns into retinas, before nostrils fill with charred flesh, eardrums reverberate with yowls for help, cries for mama. I want to pound the pain of yesterday so deep into their chests that they'll be careful tomorrow. If they knew how soft a body really was, would that lessen their love of steel? Would they caress their arms and legs to savor memory? Or would they still want to get some? Imagine, I want to say, a nail piercing your foot slowly, rusted barbs ripping raw edges of flesh. Multiply that by 100, by 1,000. But these kids are not good at math. They will live forever. They will get some, taste it for themselves, taste it, smell it, chew it, swallow it, become what they've dreamed of since weaning off cartoons. Get some, get some, get some. The mantra spews, and only one thing will salve this slash of longing. One cure, one blade that promises exactly what they want. The guillotine beckons, and up the steps they climb, chanting with each footfall, get some, get some. To look inside its basket, they must expose tender necks. Even this won't stop them. Nothing will. Not until they get some, until they get some.
Wow, powerful. So as English teachers as well, what is it that you think makes that poem outstanding?
Well, for me, it's the emotion of it. It's the realization that our young people go off to war as if it's a game, you know, and until they experience what war is really like, they don't know, you know, and that's probably the basis of his thing. He just would love to save these young people.
Mm-hmm. And Claudia, what do you think? How did that strike you?
I think the same way, yeah. It's, and his language is very sparse and understated, and that makes it more powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and his rhythm
Right.
and the variance and the cadence. So there's something that you said in the panel, and you said that writing poetry, I love free verse, but you're also saying when you go to restricted forms that that's freeing. How can you repeat what you said?
Right. I think some people think that writing in forms using metrical rules and rhyme is restrictive, but really it frees up the subconscious, the unconscious, because if you're focusing on finding a word that rhymes, then other thoughts seem to come more freely. It's very much like a dream process. So.
Wow, sounds very good. And so we'll be having Dr. Fred Foote up again talking about the healing nature of poetry. But first, and before we go, though, we want to talk about Claudia's book, Let's Get Out of Here, Poems of War, Love, and Peace of Mind. And this is what she wrote, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this is just a collection of poems I've written over the last several years that were inspired by the experience of working with veterans. I'm not a veteran myself, I hope that's clear. I'm a friend of veterans, I think, and having worked in that capacity made me, well, it just inspired a lot of poems. So
this is super. It's so inspiring hearing from both of you today, and we hope to hear from more poets tonight when we come back. But thank you so much for being with us, Claudia, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.
This year, 28,000 Americans will be diagnosed with oral cancer. Every year, 7,000 Americans die of oral cancer.
I'm Eva Cohen, and I'm an oral cancer survivor. I didn't fit the profile. I didn't smoke or drink. I had no family history of cancer, no family history of cancer. I was 31 years old. 31 years old. I went to see my dentist about a sore in my mouth that wouldn't heal. It was oral cancer. I had to have a radical neck dissection and a portion of my tongue reconstructed. I didn't know if I was going to live or die.
I'm Surgeon General Richard Carmona. The survival rate for oral cancer is only 50%. Oral cancer can happen to anyone. If you have a sore or lesion in your mouth that doesn't heal within 2 weeks, see your dentist. Early detection is the key.
Early detection saves lives. I know.
1 in 8 Americans goes hungry. One idea helped change that. A community started a garden that blossomed into farmers markets. 1 in 6 children lives in poverty. One group of women found an answer by opening a daycare center that their neighbors could afford. Today, 36 million Americans live in poverty. But one by one, people are helping themselves and each other to change the picture of poverty to one of hope. For easy ways you can help, visit povertyusa.org.
2 words for you. Pop quiz. Ready? Name any funny movie. A drama. Name a mystery. And one more thing. Name the movie your kids saw today in science class.
Know what really matters. Know about your kid's school. And know about your kid. Find out 100 ways to know more, do more.
2 words for you. Pop quiz. Ready? Name any funny movie. A drama. Name a mystery. And one more thing. Name the movie your kids saw today in science class.
Know what really matters. Know about your kid's school. And know about your kid. Find out 100 ways to know more, do more.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
We're back here with Fred Foote, who wrote Medic Against Bomb. And Fred wrote Medic Against Bomb. And we also have Richard Epstein still on the phone here, because there are a few questions we needed to ask. My question, before we get into the books that you've written, from a practical sense, how I know not all veterans experience PTSD, and different veterans experience it at different levels. So if we could ask Richard first what he's experienced on a personal level, and then perhaps you could talk about the clinical aspect.
Sure.
That would be great. But so Richard, when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, what has been your experience and the experience of your friends?
Well, one thing I've noticed is a lot of people are still very hesitant about having it treated. I mean, it seems like a catch-22 where they'll lose their job or perhaps lose their security clearance or not be allowed to work in the same function or capacity as before. So that obviously makes them think twice about getting medical attention or psychological attention.
That's true. I've spoken to some high-level executives, and they never want to go on record for feeling things, but what they told me was that later in life, sometimes 30 years later, that's when people might feel things. And so it's an interesting juxtaposition. Perhaps they're busy raising families or this or that. I'm not exactly sure. So Fred could talk a little bit more about it, but they were saying that sometimes some symptoms surface later in life that didn't surface earlier. So not only do they not talk about it for professional reasons, but things are changing as they get older. But Fred, what's on a clinical sense? How would you describe the syndrome?
Well, PTSD, Kim, is post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's a reaction to the terrible psychological trauma of combat. Everyone in combat has severe stress, and it's a very painful thing to endure. But we call it PTSD when the painful symptoms of this last more than a couple of months. And there's 4 things that constitute having PTSD. One is having re-experiencing episodes of the traumas of combat, such as nightmares or flashbacks, even like hallucinations where you actually think you're back there. Second is withdrawal and not being willing to talk to people, social withdrawal. Third is that you become very irritable and kind of agitated to small stimuli, such as a car backfires and you throw yourself to the ground because you think you're hearing an explosion. Okay, and then fourth, having a lot of suffering in your life, problems with mood and thinking that have a lot of negativity. And we think that PTSD goes along with brain injury from bomb blasts, and we think as many as 30% of our returning Iraqi and Afghan veterans may have these conditions.
Wow.
So for us, it's a big emergency. We must find ways to treat these conditions.
And then the other emergency I heard was that there's a statistic back in 2014 that 2 people were committing suicide a day.
Actually, it's even more than that.
Okay.
We're having a terrible epidemic of veteran suicide, both the young ones and also the Vietnam generation, that we have to address.
Okay. And why do you think it would be later in life that the Vietnam generation is?
Just the burden of suffering that continues. And because PTSD can really mess up your social relationships, your work, your jobs, all your happiness in life, there's a lot of possibility of getting alcohol or substance use problems along with that as you try to numb yourself against the pain. So it's a problem that just wreaks havoc in your whole life in all its dimensions.
Wow, yeah.
And it's happening to our finest people who've defended us against the nation's enemies.
Yeah, and I remember seeing you in action, using writing as therapy, but also the community project that Richard was working on and getting writing out into the community and getting the warriors together, sharing their poetry. That what was neat is it was multi-generational, and you had the different veterans being able to communicate with each other once they've shared their poetry. But Richard, how have you found writing to be helpful for yourself personally and what you've seen in your group?
I heard someone say long ago that if you write the story, it doesn't control you. So it's the idea of getting down on paper some of the traumas that you may have gone through lessens the impact and makes you able to cognitively deal with it in an easier fashion.
Wow.
So instead of bottling things up inside, and one of your earlier guests mentioned about dealing with the periphery, and that's an excellent way of starting out.
Wow.
So I think just the idea of trying to get down on paper some of the thoughts that you may have bottled up in your head. You may not even know what you're actually thinking. And I aside from being part of the creative process, it helps you deal with these things.
And Fred, how did that work for you? Tell us about your personal experience in the medical rooms, the hospitals, in the service, and so it was. You can have stress from serving in that way. So how did that help you? How did writing help you?
My stress was very minor compared to some of the combat veterans. I'm not a combat veteran. I take care of the wounded some distance behind the line. But without a doubt, writing my book, Medic Against Bomb, the poetry about the wounded experiences, it really did help me in some of the ways that Dick was mentioning. You know, Kim, first off, anyone who has serious symptoms of PTSD should see a mental health professional, because many treatments do exist in the usual psychiatry that can help, but it doesn't always work. So it's important for folks with PTSD also to make art, make music, get invested in that, and also be in nature. Those are two of the things we've really found help against PTSD.
And in your book, Medic Against Bomb, you talk about, you have a poem, one of my favorite poems is Rock Creek Park, PTSD, Rock Creek Park. So if you can, there's certain lines in there that are absolutely just knocks you against the wall, and it's just wonderful. And so my question is, on that, there was a line there about how, and perhaps we'll have you read this in a little bit, but or I can read it for you, but
either way.
Okay. I love this. It starts, Rock Creek rumbles as daylight ends. Its water pours over straits and bends, flinging its way through spouts and flumes as human fortune collides with doom. Tumult issued in roaring sounds clears the mist as the rush tilts down to freezing deeps and pernicious bogs, bleakly featured with fallen logs. You soothed my suffering mind before, and how I wish you were not transformed, turned so fatal in each detail, your clean, bright energy leached and paled. I shun like fever's ferocities, such haunted boulders and frightened trees, all over the creek an expanse of foam, quick jets like blood, flung chips like bone. So I'll pause there, because for the person, the creek had changed. It had been soothing, and all of a sudden now it's haunting.
Yes.
So why was that?
Well,
exactly?
It's the sort of thing that happens with PTSD. But number one, I was trying to show some of the sheer power and terrible force of the combat experiences. It's just like going down a Class 4 rapid. You're that out of control.
Wow.
And that's characteristic of these re-experiencing that people get. It just simply takes over them completely. And then the second thing is that getting PTSD and these terrible experiences, it changes the way you think about familiar things. Like even about your wife and children can change as a result of this trauma and cause relationship problems, right?
Wow.
So in this case, the soldier found the Rock Creek Park a very healing place, a soothing place. But when he comes back after the war with PTSD, many of those same features trigger anxiety and panic.
Wow. The same features, you mean the sound of the rushing water?
The water, the rushing water. Before it was more soothing, now it's like he imagined himself thrown down a river rapid out of control, and it's terrifying.
Wow.
And these are the sort of, just in a very mild way, this is the sort of thing that your PTSD sufferers have to contend with.
And he doesn't necessarily have had to have a water experience in his past?
Nope, not at all. You cannot predict exactly how a person's going to react individually.
Wow, yeah. And so I'll finish up with two more verses here. You chimed your wish in Fallujah's ear, and twilight echoed as it does here. How many heroes in those harsh days fell into your flood and were borne away? Rock Creek, measure of all my fears, I curse your crying with my own tears. Fury sweeping across the ground, return my brothers whom you've drowned. So now
Thank
I like
you for reading that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, return my brothers whom you have drowned. That's heavy. So
Yes.
where did that line come from?
It emerged just out of the experience. The Treek is actually murderous of the soldiers in his mind. Can actually be killing you.
Wow. Okay. All right. So I won't. And it's kind of like a thing you can extract political things, but I won't go there. But
That's
it's
fine.
Just
let it work on,
it's
your
kind
emotions.
of like one of those 60s songs that can be interpreted several ways. But I love it. I love it. And so I just really appreciate your artistry. And now, what other poem is your favorite in this book?
Oh, I love them all. You want me to say another one, or I'll tell you what?
Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
so I'll do a real short one because
Mm-hmm.
we're short of time.
Mm-hmm.
But the last one in the collection, which I also use at the end of my performances, which I raise money for Wounded Warriors with, where I've raised $500,000 for the projects we'll talk about later. And this one is about a soldier that lost his life. And the worst thing can happen to you is to lose your friend or family member in a war. The families tell us all they suffer as they imagine the sufferings of their soldier in the hour of death. But most of the time they also say that with many years that changes. And when they think of their loved one, the tortured image has gone away and they see in their mind a smiling young man or woman. So this little poem is about that. It's called The Gunner John.
Okay. Actually, we'll do that.
We can do it at
we've got
the end.
about a minute?
Okay, we'll do it. The Gunner John.
Okay.
Pity him here, his skull crushed by a tread. Beneath the mud pressed out one intact jaw. Some teeth at 90 degrees, the scraps of a tongue. Was he no more than this? No, this was a mask. Place it in calm.
Necesito trabajo. I would like to speak English better. Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Thank you. We are back with Dr. Fred Foote. He won the USA Best Book Awards finalist, Medic Against the Bomb. And so I'm excited and delighted that you're with us. And he won a host of other awards, including the Grayson Award. But so tonight, he also wants to tell us about a project he's doing called the Green Road Project. Now, Fred is a Virginia native. You were born in Virginia.
I was.
Where?
Arlington.
Arlington. There you go. So, but now they've got him at Walter Reed, and they got him doing some work in D.C. and Maryland. But we have him here because he's one of our own. So Fred, tell us a little bit more about the Green Road.
Well, Kim, my night job is poetry. My day job, I do holistic medicine for wounded warriors at Walter Reed Military Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland. And especially right now, the Green Road Project and the Walter Reed Arts Program, Healing Through Art and Nature, and those are supported by the public. So once we get into this, I'm going to do a little blitz of pictures so people understand how we're healing PTSD with art and nature at Walter Reed.
Great.
All right, so first slide is me. Anything I tell you is on that website, medicagainstbomb.com. Anything about poetry, anything about veterans, all there, and you can talk to me and communicate with me there too, okay? So please go on. I'm going to tell you about how we're healing at Walter Reed. Number one, as we said before, our soldiers today do not have bullet wounds. They have brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder, and many times the treatment doesn't work, pills and surgery. So we had to find a new kind of medicine at Walter Reed called holistic care. And holistic care, in contrast to usual care, which treats an organ, single organ, holistic care treats your whole body at once, okay? And Walter Reed is now the nation's leader in that, and that's a picture of our new Walter Reed Hospital. Now, treatments of the whole body include a lot of things. Healing buildings, because your whole body's in the building, engaging your family in care, integration of care, so one care plan for one person. That's another healing building, our NICO Brain Injury Center at Walter Reed. And then wellness, that's a whole body treatment, nutrition, exercise, acupuncture, that's all holistic. And then what I'm telling you about today is how we heal through art and nature. That's a beautiful room from the Brain Injury Center. That's where our wounded warriors do their yoga. It's called Central Park. Of course, they don't call it yoga, they call it warrior battle mind strengthening, okay?
It's beautiful, yeah.
Now, the Walter Reed Arts Program started 2011, one of the biggest in the nation. We have 3 paid coordinators and 10 paid artists and numerous volunteers. And basically, we have our warriors make art, music, dance, and other arts, and it really helps their PTSD. They always tell us the arts are the most important part of the therapy. These are some of the famous masks from the Brain Injury Center that was in National Geographic. These are all decorated by the warriors to show what they feel. This is another piece of art from the Brain Injury Center. It doesn't have to be real elaborate. This warrior is just making a simple little mandala. And Kim, watching art or listening to music is good, but what really heals you, like Dick Epstein was saying, is making the art, making music, painting, and doing it yourself. That's where the healing comes in. Here's one of our art studios, and you know Charlie Sheen?
Yes.
Well, Charlie Sheen has a bad rep in the tabloids, but he also gave us $1 million for an art studio, music studio. So if you hear anything against him, you say he's helped our wounded warriors. This is another little picture of some art just in some of our kids, as we call them, their home. Now, I'm coming back to the art, but I want to tell you how we heal through nature, and that's the Green Road Project, nation's largest healing garden, which we will complete next summer in June. What is the Green Road? Well, one thing, it is sort of a road, but it's not for cars, it's for wheelchairs. Right now, audience probably can't see the direction, but this is our campus at Walter Reed. The hospital's on the left. There's a lot of green there. You could heal with nature with that, right? There's even a natural stream, that blue line through the middle, that has a corridor of green around it. So at the moment, if you live at the top or the bottom in a warrior hotel, of this screen, and you have to move around in a wheelchair, you have to fight traffic in the streets. Well, why not build a green road that runs along that stream for wheelchairs so they can move around the base in beautiful surroundings? So the Navy's doing that part. And then where you see in the middle a yellow ball, Central Garden, my philanthropy group is building a $2 million healing garden there. This is the site of the healing garden. It's 300 yards from the Beltway. It's a beautiful ravine. The place where we're building the garden is on the left. It is a woodland and will stay a woodland, but it is being enhanced. This is a quick little picture of it, and you can see the stream is running from left to right. And you can also see a little gray line. That's our part of the wheelchair path that hooks up to the Navy wheelchair path on either end. To the right of the path is the social zone, which includes fruit trees and a council ring of boulders, an area where the warriors can get down in the stream and play. Yes, they want to drive their wheelchairs in the stream. And then there's a glade for arts performances and a little communal structure for small group meetings. The sacred part of it is on the hillside to the left of the path, surmounted by that little circle of orange and yellow, and that's our commemorative pavilion sacred to our lost comrades. This is, in fact, a picture of what it's going to look like when we finish it next year. And you can see it's very open. It doesn't play with your mind. There's a seating area on the right with an arbor. There's some artwork and a fountain, but nothing, it's all just a place where you can be with your thoughts in a setting that says that all is not trauma, that there is rebirth and regrowth. There are many beautiful trees, there's stones, there are other spiritual nature features that provide healing. The fallen tree, which is all over the site, is our symbol of the lost warrior who gives life even in death and is never absent from us even in death. We have a bunch of partners. I'm just going to mention at the bottom the TKF Foundation, our wonderful prime donors, Tom and Kitty Stoner, who gave us $1 million to help the garden. And then right above that, CDM Smith is a Chantilly, Virginia firm, and they are our engineering firm. The Institute for Integrative Health Baltimore is our sponsoring nonprofit. We have a big research program, which I don't have time to tell you about, only it's very cutting edge, very space age, to do measurements of the whole body at once to show the body as a whole getting better from illness to wellness. We did a national search and found several of these advanced masks, and we're applying them here to show that the nature exposure makes you well. That's my team. Those are brilliant engineers, scientists, soldiers, every kind of personnel. My position up top should not be construed that they listen to what I say. The only one who does is the therapy dog, Ralph, and his master, Bob Kaufman, is teaching him not to do that. So he'll be like the rest soon. The research that we're doing, I'm just going to mention, to measure the whole body moving from illness to wellness includes genetics, measuring stress markers of your stress response, and even doing artificial intelligence of your written language. It can tell us if you're healed or not. This is just one quick example. In the upper right-hand corner, you see a square. Herb Benson at Harvard has 60 genes that turn green when you have PTSD and red when you're cured of PTSD, essentially. And what you see in the upper right is 3 columns, one green one down the left, one pink one in the middle, one red one, and that's a person getting better from PTSD. So we hope to show that progression from green to pink to red is done by the garden. There's a little slide here to close up with that our site is beautiful at all times, and we have many critters on the site. We have wonderful tame deer, we have foxes, even coyotes, we have all kinds of animals, and part of our job is to bring the people with the animals in a loving kind of way. They both share the site. We're going to be feeding the animals, and it's kind of like a Garden of Eden when these things occur. There is a big fundraising campaign. You can donate to the Green Road, but just contact me through the website. Also, I will come and talk to you about any of these ways of helping veterans free of charge in your community. I want to just briefly mention the newest thing we've done. I mentioned that the Walter Reed Arts Program is healing PTSD at Walter Reed. Well, we're now taking that into the community across Maryland with the Maryland Network of Arts and Gardens for Veterans. That's art and garden projects independently run across Maryland, and a state director at the Institute for Integrative Health will train the artists, refer the veterans, and do research. We intend over the next few years to use the healing of art and nature in communities to decrease veteran suicides across Maryland. And I'll just add that if your community wants to take a shot at doing some of this in Virginia, I will come down and talk to you and tell you how it's done. Great. So what's the bottom line? Art and music making heals PTSD. Nature heals PTSD. Communities can do it. You don't have to be a doctor to help veterans with PTSD. You can take care of your own local vets in your community and find out everything at medicagainstbomb.com. This is how I hope our Green Road Garden will look in 6 months. And as President Obama says, may God bless the United States of America.
Thank you very much. Good. Well, you know, my agenda is to talk about hoping that you'll do something like this in Fairfax County.
Of course.
And of course, my favorite parks would be Mason District Park and Green Spring Park. But of course, there's also Burke and just some lovely areas. But I think about Green Spring, I think about the areas where you can have poetry recitals and different things in the community center.
Yes.
And then you have that beautiful promenade garden where that veterans can enjoy. And I also think of Bo White, who was instrumental in starting that, the Green Spring Gardens, and he was a veteran as well, a very distinguished Marine. So yes, my agenda is to have you come back again sometime, and maybe have you go head to head with some of my parks friends. And so when you do it, when you take it on the road, how do you encourage the communities to start their own program?
Well, the biggest thing is there's so few vets and so few people in the military now that often the civilian audience, which is providing the money for these philanthropic programs, holds back because they feel they don't understand the wounded warrior. So I found that my book, Medic Against Bomb, all poetry about our wounded warriors, when all I have to do in front of a Rotary Club, in front of a convention, any sort of audience, is read 10 minutes of poetry from that book with some projected images of our wounded soldiers, and immediately that audience understands the wounded soldier and they want to help, and I've raised $500,000 with poetry to help our vets through art and nature. There's a kind of a neat story. We all know this works in our heart, just like you do, that when we suffer, we seek nature and art. But we've got to get the proof to convince the doubters. That's what the research is for. We have a sister project in Portland, Oregon that's making a hospital garden right outside labor and delivery. So the women will have the option to go to the garden for labor instead of their usual room. And of course the research is compare the ones who labor in the garden to the ones who labor in the room and see if maybe they don't have better labor in the garden. But guess what? None of the women will sign up to be in the room. They all want to be in the garden. So they know in their hearts that it's the nature that's going to heal them. And this is what we're trying to give structure and research.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Beautiful work. Beautiful work. I just so admire your work. So we will have you again, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you for having me.
And what are you doing on Veterans Day?
I am pursuing fundraising for the Green Road at a location. When I can't miss. But everyone should go to Epstein's Memorial Day